Welcome to the August 8th, 2023 board meeting of USD 305 Board of Education. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening is approval of the agenda that's been presented.
We did have an amendment to the agenda.
Okay, so we've got an
As
amendment
amended.
to the agenda here.
We needed to add an executive session.
Got an executive session for personnel that's been added.
I move we amend the agenda.
Okay, Ms. Schamberg moves we approve the amended agenda.
Approve the amended.
Okay, and Ms. Zimmerman seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. Oh, and we have Gabe Grant joining us by phone tonight. Gabe? Aye. Aye, so motion carries 7-0. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of minutes of the July 11th, 2023 regular meeting, the personnel report, the financial reports, which include the July bills list, the June treasurer's report, the June investment report, and to approve the encumbrance listings. To Scott Rice for the purchase of lunchroom tables for Oakdale, Cottonwood, and Stewart Elementary Schools in the amount of $178,068.88. To New Directions in the amount of $24,295.20 for the renewal of the Employee Assistance Plan for the 23-24 school year. To CDWG in the amount of $32,750 for the replacement of uninterrupted power supplies at Cottonwood, Husener, Meadowlark, Oakdale, and Sunset Elementary Schools. To Loving Guidance for the conscious discipline materials in the amount of $23,610. And to approve the South High parking lot change order to Hutton Construction in the amount of $103,400. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda? Dr. Bandry?
Move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Bandry. We have a motion. Ms. Cusso seconds. Any discussion regarding the consent agenda? All in favor, please raise your right hand. And Mr. Grant? Okay. Motion carries 7-0. The next item we have is public forum, and we do not have anyone who is requested to speak with us this evening. So we'll move to our action agenda. And the first thing we have for action this evening is regarding bond refinancing with Mr. Greg Varenberg.
Good evening, board members. Greg Varenberg with Raymond James and Associates. Appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you. As many of you may recall, we talked about a bond refinancing opportunity earlier in this year, and it's hard to believe that was way back in February. The refinancing approach that we were using was a creative technique where instead of calling or redeeming bonds because of a legal provision that allowed us to do so, we actually have gone out to current bondholders and asked if they would be willing to sell or tender their bonds at a discounted price. And at that February 14th board meeting, you adopted an authorizing resolution that gave us permission to then go back and start working with those investors. There's quite a few bond investors, and they included some individual investors. Banks own quite a few of the 2019 bonds. And then there were also a couple of other institutional investors that are going to fall in the money manager or investment advisor or mutual fund category. And what we found as we worked with those investors is that the banks were far less willing to sell their bonds at that price that was being offered. But we did have the investment advisor, money manager, and mutual fund investors willing to consider a sale of their bonds that would allow us to complete a refinancing. That's about 50% of the outstanding bonds that we were targeting for a refinancing opportunity. So a little disappointed we couldn't get all the way to 100%. Glad we at least have some investors that are willing to consider that sale. And so that gave us then the base to work from for the refinancing. And again, the approach is to sell new bonds and lock in a savings and take the proceeds of the new bonds and pay off those bonds that we're buying in from those current bondholders. When we first started working on this refinancing, we knew that the sale of the refunding bond issue would have to use a creative approach because it would have to be, interest would have to be taxable until September 1st of this year, and then interest rate would drop down to a tax-exempt rate. We had the bondholders willing to sell, but we struggled to find a investor group that would buy that convertible interest rate approach. And that's actually a good thing. And in hindsight, it looks like by waiting, we'll be in a situation where we can capture much more savings than we originally had targeted for the district. So now that we're very close to that September 1st date, the IRS rules allow us to immediately sell the new refunding bond issue as a tax-exempt interest rate, and we don't have to have that convertible approach. And since it's a very straightforward refunding bond issue, we can sell that in the same manner that we've sold all of your prior bonds that we've had an opportunity to help you with. We have a bond rating assigned, we prepare an offering document, we give that information to investors, and then we conduct an order period for the sale of those bonds. And we can sell those in multiple investors in $5,000 denomination. So it's a very simple, very predictable process to complete the sale of the refunding bonds. So since so much time had gone by since we first started working on this, and our approach to selling the refunding bonds is a little different than we had first started out with, we thought it'd be appropriate to give you an update on where we're at. So when we look back at the estimated savings that we were looking to capture at that February 14th meeting, assuming we could get 50% of the bond investors to participate, we had savings of about $1,895,000 that the district would be able to capture. If we could get all the way up to 100%, then that savings would have been closer to about $3.7 million. But we knew that might not be realistic, and that's exactly what we found out. But the good news is now, based upon the price at which we believe we'll be buying in the bonds from those 2019 bondholders and the interest rates for a tax-exempt issue where we are currently, now we're looking at savings that could be as much as $5,019,000. And again, that compares back to that $1.8 million we were thinking that we might be capturing. So we're not quite there. We still have a couple of steps to complete, but it looks very good in terms of the level of savings relative to where we started out. The other thing, too, that I think is important to keep in mind is that the district has taken advantage of low interest rates while it's had bonds outstanding, and that goes all the way back to 1998, 1999, when I first started working with the district. And you've captured refinancings that had savings ranging anywhere from about $216,000 to the largest savings that we were able to capture was just a little bit over $5 million. And so average annual savings on about the 10 or 11 refinancings that we've completed has been about $1.1 million, and it's now up to a cumulative total of $12.2 million in savings. And that's a lot of money that has stayed in the district rather than being paid out to bond investors. If we're able to lock in an additional $5 million in savings, I mean, that compared to some of the savings we've locked in the past, it really is a very high level of savings and will push that total savings up closer to $17 million. So the process that we intend to go through, assuming you would like for us to continue forward and getting this all locked in, is that we will have the bond rating released here very soon. We'll have that preliminary official statement or offering document prepared and sent to potential investors. We will schedule the sale for the new refunding bond issue on August 22nd. On August 22nd, we'll lock in the interest rates on the new bond issue, and we'll also confirm the acquisition price for the 2019 bondholders that are selling their bonds that we're refinancing. So on the 22nd, everything will be locked in, and then we plan to have a very short closing process because we don't want to give an opportunity for the 2019 bondholders to change their mind or back away from that commitment. So we would have the sale on the 22nd. We would have a closing of the issue on September 1st. Everything, the final numbers, the savings, everything will be locked in on that August 22nd date. So the action that is presented to you this evening is what I would describe as pre-approval of the bond resolution subject to certain parameters. And that pre-approval of the bond resolution allows us then to conduct the offering on the 22nd without requiring a special board meeting or waiting until your scheduled September board meeting. We can get everything locked in on the 22nd, and then we'll present the final savings to the district administration. And if it's acceptable to the district, then we would have the board president sign the bond purchase agreement and then sign off on those final terms and the savings. If something were to happen that the savings is materially different than what I'm sharing with you here this evening and what's in your board packet, then we would pull back. We wouldn't have the sale on the 22nd, and we would give you an update and see if you still wanted us to push ahead. But I would say that the biggest variable, if you will, or concern we would have on getting this all locked in is just making sure that we keep those existing 2019 bondholders willing to sell their bonds. Then, based on where interest rates are at right now, it looks like it would be a very favorable level of savings. So again, this is, it's a little bit unusual that it's taken us so long to get this close to the finish line, but I appreciate your patience. But it looks like it could be a very good outcome for the district, and wanted to give you the update this evening. If you would like for us to continue forward on that schedule that I had mentioned, then the action you would take this evening would be the adoption of that bond resolution. And then we'll be reporting back to you on the 22nd what the final results are. So I'll stop right there and happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Bender?
Mike, I guess kind of a long-term question. I see no reason why we wouldn't approve this, so perhaps we'll get to that in a second. But I'm thinking back to 1998 and when the taxpayers approved the most recent bonds that resulted in the renovations of the high schools and so many other things. If we could find ways to advertise or plan ahead for these things, I mean, 12 million, 17 million, a lot of dollars there. I think about our friends in Concordia that have been trying for years to get a bond issue approved there to replace 100-year-old high school and haven't been able to. I mean, if they had data like this, for example, or if there's some future bond issue that USD 305 needs to release, if we had data, I think certainly we can market this, what the work you guys have done over time. But I just wonder, are there ways to plan for this at all? I mean, in 1998, when you and Lisa were first talking, if you were there in 1998, I'm not sure. Okay, but close. But are there ways we could have even remotely thought 17 million could be saved? You see where I'm going?
Yeah, and a couple of thoughts, and you bring up a really good point. I think there's a really strong message to share with the community, not just on this refinancing, but when you look all the way back to 98 and in the more recent bond election in 2014, you look at where the mill levy, I mean, if you go back to some of the campaign material, I believe in 98, we were saying that the mill levy would be around 18 mills. And then you look at the representation to the voters during the most recent bond election. The mill levy has come in significantly below what was represented to voters. And we thought that could happen, but we didn't want to promise it. And we use conservative assumptions when we're planning for an election. But the difficult part on the refinancing piece is you don't know if interest rates will drop and you'll have that opportunity, and you can't promise it. But the district has been very proactive in terms of when there is an opportunity to move quickly to capture that, and that's where you have saved $12.2 million. That's another powerful message to share with the voters. But one other piece of this refinancing plan that I failed to mention, but is also pretty powerful, is we're looking at paying off this issue 2 years sooner than scheduled. So not only has the mill levy been lower, not only did you save $12.2 million in interest, you're also getting the bonds paid off more quickly at a mill levy that's well below what voters were expecting to pay. And that's, from a plan of finance perspective, that's about as good as it gets. We couldn't guarantee that at the election date, but, you know, you take action when opportunities present themselves for those things to occur. And we will help you with crafting that message, because I think even beyond this refinancing, there's a good story to tell the community. And, you know, if you're a district that's struggled to pass a bond election, you'd like to say that you'll look for those same opportunities, but it's hard to promise exactly what it would look like.
Thank you. That's a good response. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes, can you give us a simple answer of why the bond holders want to, they're selling their bonds early? Are they getting as much as they thought they were going to get? And that's why, I don't quite understand why they
Sure.
would sell them to you at this
No,
point.
it's a very good question. And so these bonds were sold in 2019 in a very low interest rate environment. And as interest rates increase, then the value of that bond, or the price at which you could sell that bond, goes down. And so I'll use a simple example. My numbers may be a little bit off. But so bond investors, and especially if you're an institutional investor, you're looking at what's the value of the investment that I own today, and what's the market price. And the market price on the bonds that we're looking to refinance may be somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 82% of the face value of the bonds. So if an investor went out and sold the bonds they own in the open market, they would get 80% of face value. We're offering an acquisition price that's slightly above that, and we haven't set the price exactly, but just for illustration purposes, we may offer those investors a price of, say, 84% or 85% of face value. So that investor is saying, okay, I can get a good price for selling the bonds that I own. I'll take that good price, and now I can go back out in the bond market. I can get, say, 85%, and then go back out in the market and buy something similar for a lower price. So it's kind of an immediate profit to that investor to entice them to sell the bonds early.
Thank you.
We want to give enough of incentive that they're willing to do so, but we don't want to give so much of a price that it cuts into the savings that you're getting.
And I think if I understand that correctly, had we not taken action in 2019, we wouldn't have this opportunity today.
Yeah, the 2019, it's interesting, the 2019 refinancing is the one where we had $5,086,000. Now we've found a way to generate another $5 million in savings by refinancing that issue again. And it's important to note too, anytime you've done a refinancing, you're not extending the repayment schedule. You're going in and just selectively taking a portion of the bonds, the portion that can capture savings, and replacing it with bonds at new, lower interest rates, and that's really what we're doing here.
Dr. Bender?
I'd like to move that we approve the updated resolution for the Series 2023 General Obligation Refunding Bonds as presented.
We have a motion. Ms. Schamberger seconds. Any other questions at this time? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Mr. Grant? Aye. Aye. So motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next item for this evening is board policy with Ms. Wright.
Good evening. As you may recall, at your July meeting, we had a work session and reviewed another round of policy updates. We met on those. We had nice discussion, and we present those to you again tonight for final reading. Our recommendation is that you approve the policies as presented. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Ms. Wright? Ms. Zimmerman?
I move that we approve the policy revisions as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Ms. Casso seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Mr. Grant? Aye. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
That was easy enough. All right, we will move to our next item, which is our discussion agenda with Salina Baseball Enterprises. We have Mr. Tomlins and Mr. Hancock back with us again this evening.
Thank you for having us. My name's Byron Tomlins. This is Kenny Hancock. Another board member, Larry Brittigam, has joined us. We are on a volunteer board with the name of Salina Baseball Enterprises. For those of you not familiar with our board, we were established in the early 1980s with a purpose of supporting American Legion Baseball and supporting facilities in Salina for girls softball and boys baseball. We followed in line with Dean Evans, who supported baseball at many levels. His son-in-law, Gary Ray, basically was the establisher of Salina Baseball Enterprises, which has been anywhere from a 10 to 13 member board since that time. All volunteers. In 1984, we established ourselves as a 501(c) nonprofit organization, the reason being we were raising funds for the building of Dean Evans Stadium out on Markley, and so that allowed us to be tax exempt to our donors. We worked with the city on our first paired project to build Dean Evans, which was completed in '91. And then we had a remodel project, which we presented to your board in 2020 and with the city, and we're about set to go to, then the COVID hit, of course, and the city had to pull out at that time due to uncertain terms, but we made a presentation to this school board, and along with yourselves, Salina Baseball Enterprises, Kansas Wesleyan University, and several other private donors, went ahead and did our half of the original project, which included the total remodeling of Dean Evans Stadium and the establishing of 2 softball diamonds, which sit on the grounds of South High School. And so we completed that project in 2021. We kept communications with the city, and they have since started their remodeling of Bill Burke, and we have come back now to complete a completed vision of the original project. And what we are wanting to do is to build a second premier baseball diamond right next to Dean Evans, where Roger Wilbur Field exists right now, and raise the funds for that. And we're asking if you would consider helping us with that project like the first. The city voted last night, if you hadn't heard, to, well, first of all, let me back up. With the total project that we're working with, it's been estimated to be $3.1 million at Wilbur Field, with a possible $400,000 addition for some extra work at James Matson, which is just the very north end. We have committed to undertake the Wilbur Field project at 3.1, and if we can, still optional, do the whole thing for 3.5. Last night, the city voted to commit $1 million to that 3.1.5 total. We are prepared to raise the balance, and we are, again, asking for your help on the project. What it will involve is a second premier baseball diamond right to the north of Dean Evans, which will include a fully turfed baseball field, a grandstand that's not as elaborate as Dean Evans, but still a very nice covered grandstand, with an additional pavilion on the wraparound grandstand on the sides that you can sit up high on the platform and watch Dean Evans Stadium as well as the the new Wilbur Field that will be. So we realized, like in some of your athletic events in baseball, and what we think would be an advantage to USD 305 is that when you have a JV and a varsity game going at the same night, it won't have to be clear on the end at Matson. It can be right next door with the new Wilbur Field and Dean Evans, with varsity and JV playing right next to each other. So if you're parents, then you have two kids playing. That's going to be a big advantage to you. But the overall benefit, in addition to that, is right now Salina has one premier baseball diamond. We think, every time I drive by South High, I love to look across and see the big green patch and the chocolate brown patch, and it looks so pretty with dual diamonds that, you know, you've got two diamonds, always can support two games going at the same time. Baseball needs the same thing, because really we have one premier baseball diamond for the 14 to 18-year-old players, high school, and the next diamond is quite a step down. Matson's a decent diamond, but I think if you've attended baseball games, it falls short of the quality that we want Salina to represent. And with Tower Field by the water tower, Matson, and then two premier diamonds in the middle, if we can spruce up three of the four, we think Tower is still a very nice diamond and accommodating, but if we can bump up the other three, we have the capability of not only holding a lot more tournaments in the summer, but being a better facility for the spring, which, as you know, you have three high schools and a college, and still one premier diamond is not getting it done, even though it's so much better than it was. So we would like to complete this project, really run it to a finish, something that we can very much be proud of, that is as good a facility up at Berkeley Family Recreational Complex that we envisioned in the first place. In order to do that, that's the financial cost, and we're prepared to raise that, and we certainly sit here and ask for your help with that. And we brought along some pictures of the existing Wilbur Field there, and just outside the left field fence of Dean Evans, and then some of the early architectural drawings that we had as our vision to make that area, again, so much nicer, turfed, reduce the rainouts, the scheduling, the practices can be not having to be canceled in that busy spring, because the one thing with any diamond but Evans up there now, rain sets us back and sometimes even cancels the JV games down at Matson. And again, hardly any games get canceled at Evans because the turf. Only if it's lightning or heavy rains will you have to stop. And if the heavy rains cease, you can play in 5 minutes at Evans, where the day is done. If it's a kind of a joke we had at Matson, if it's high humidity, you might get rained out. And so we certainly think it's going to be a feather in the cap for Salina. We consider Salina a baseball and a softball town. Right now, we think the double facilities for the girls, we're very proud of it. We'd just like to get two premier fields for the baseball, and certainly I think the community will see a benefit, not only in the spring with the 4A high school tournaments that can be held at both places, and Salina can be a showcase entertainer across the state. Kenny Hancock can answer any construction questions. One of the things that we do provide is with this project, just like with Dean Evans, we do all the engineering. We don't have to spend extra costs. Salina Baseball Enterprises with Kenny and his crew furnish all that. There's no extra costs. We did it with Dean Evans. We did it with the softball diamonds with Chris Upson's help and his team with us. We've proven we can do it. We've proven we can do it right. We hope you have confidence in us and we'd like to go to work to finish it.
To build a little bit on what Byron said, last night the city did approve, and we took the liberty, there was a thing called a development agreement that we had to create as a partnership agreement between us and the city on the first phase one with Dean Evans. And we kind of had a similar agreement with you all separately for the South Highfields. And in that, we got the usage agreement put together on who got priority at Dean Evans. And USD 305 and Salina Baseball have the number one priority, meaning you turn your schedule in, you cannot be usurped by anybody else. We have the same privileges after the high school season, May 31st through the end of the summer, and you have it from the time you start practice until then. Kansas Wesleyan is also subservient to you guys as far as scheduling, so you turn your schedule in, Kansas Wesleyan must schedule their games and practices around USD 305. We had to come to an agreement on this phase two, and we used the same Dean Evans development agreement as a starting point, and we modified it for the Wilburfield project that we're currently trying to undertake. And I took the liberty of making sure that and it's written in there and it was approved last night, you guys have the same scheduling priority for Wilburfield as you have for Dean Evans. So you now have kind of a 2-for-1 thing that we got for you guys, because I know it's very important to be able to practice with 2 high schools, to be able to practice and play your games. So you already have that in place, regardless of what happens. So we're going to show you maybe some renderings of our vision for what we think Wilburfield can look like. Apologize for this photograph. It was an aerial photograph that was taken by one of our consultants, and we wanted to show you the relationship between Dean and maybe the current state of Wilburfield. Now there's a better rendering of what Dean Evans is on the lower part of the video, and of course Wilburfield fully turfed, bullpens turfed, and there's some structures down there we're going to talk about here in a moment. Here's more of a 3D version. The structure right behind home plate is a covered grandstand. I've got a photo of that here later on. It's exactly like the one that's currently at South. The elevated platforms that Byron was talking about is to either side of that. You can see, you can do one of two things. We haven't decided how we want to do it for sure. You could put bleachers underneath those, or we might leave it so that you just have lawn chairs. Seems like people are liking their lawn chair flexibility these days, but you can certainly have bleachers if we want, and it's a railing up on the top platform. Right now, I think it's 15 by 30 feet to give you a dimensional idea, and we envision that just being bag chair or lawn chair seating. Like Byron said, you can watch both games from either side. Another view of that, this one actually gives us a little better view of the relationship of the elevated platform. You can see the covered grandstand and of course Dean Evans in the background. You can clearly see over the 8-foot tall fence at Dean and still see the play there. Another similar view down the third base line. I don't know if you recognize those dugouts, but they're going to be identical to the ones that were built at South High, just bigger for baseball because you have bigger squads, quite frankly, just due to the more pitchers that you have to carry on a baseball team. And here's an aerial view of what it would look like. There it is, you guys will probably recognize that, the covered grandstand at Dean. We think it'll be exactly that same thing. It worked out so well, and we had a great vendor on that project. If we need to make it bigger because of baseball diamonds tend to be bigger, we will. And they come in gradiated increments. But we think this one's probably going to be adequate for Wilbur. The dugouts, as I mentioned earlier, that's the South High dugouts. They will be identical over at Wilburfield on both sides with the storage shed at one end, and they were just going to be larger due to the more heads that we're going to be playing. And that's really it. Have any questions that we can answer for you?
Excuse me, I just have one comment. I thought you should take credit, Kenny, for you were the softball coach for a while, right?
Well, I was the pitching coach for 21 years at South High School, yes. Yeah, I wasn't the head coach. When you started baseball and softball in 1991, a teacher in the USD 305, Daryl Holting, I'm sure you all know the name. He called me up because we played baseball together. He asked me, and he knew that I had played men's fast pitch, as did Byron. That's where we met playing college baseball and then men's fast pitch together. He asked if I'd come be the pitching coach. I took it on for 20-some years, and I still give pitching lessons in town. I just don't work solely for South High School anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I
Yes.
suspect you may have talked about it with Ms. Exline or Ms. Peters, but as you've tossed out the plan, do you have a number in mind you're hoping this entity might approve? Or should we just pass the hat and put in $7 apiece? Or what are you thinking?
We can pass the hat, but we're hoping for more than $7 a piece.
All of it. No. We've asked to consider 1 million, which is what you contributed to the first phase. We will be very much appreciative of any amount. One other thing that I would like to say on the fundraising, since that's kind of my area, when we refer to Wilbur Field, I would like for you to know that I've already had approved the new field will not be Wilbur Field. Our intention, and we have the approval of the Wilbur family already, which I've obtained, is to name the field, the tower field that's right by the water tower, that will become Roger Wilbur Field. And this new field, we used to sell the name recognition as part of our fundraiser. And that's $500,000, and I sold that today. And I can't tell you the name yet because it's not official, but I can tell you that we sold that today.
Real quick, I think the first thing I'd say is thank you for all you've done. I remember when we started talking about this several years ago, and the work that you guys have and your organization has put into this, and even the South High Fields. We had some districts in, was it earlier this month, and touring our facility. I know you were part of that, and we've got some great facilities around town. Can you tell me timeline, what you're thinking? And then how does that apply to us moving forward?
Well, originally, we wanted to start in August. Clearly, we're not going to start in August. And that's purely because the city, it took a long time to get through the city, and it often does. It's just the way it is. If we start now, and everything's, well, we haven't signed it yet, but that's just putting the final documents together, and we'll sign it within the next week or two, I'm sure. If we can start, I'm saying in October of this year, you'll be playing on it in spring. And I can say that with confidence because we started in November on Dean and South, and we finished 3 stadiums, and there were no games missed. Everybody played, and Kansas Wesleyan included. So if we have another month, had we started in August, the turf company said they'd be done by Christmas. So easily we will be done playing if we start, even as late as November, you'll be able to play in the spring of 24.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, we have this item as a discussion agenda item this evening, so we'll look at it. I imagine our board members will talk with staff, and hopefully we can maybe look at it again in the future. Mr. Grant, did you have any follow-up? I need to probably make sure.
I don't think anything directly. I know the last time we went through this process, we kind of had a little bit of a larger discussion related to other sports facilities priorities, and some information from the ADs was helpful on what needed to be targeted and how this request, the original baseball softball request, kind of fit into those priorities. I think something like that here could be helpful again, just as we look at this large amount of money to commit to a project again.
Okay.
Can I ask if it would be helpful for you? This is a big ask, and so would it be helpful for you to have a work session where you could, over the next several weeks, think of, okay, here are questions that I need to ask. I could get the ADs to join us to be able to answer questions about how this fits in with kind of the overall larger needs and how this meets needs that we're currently experiencing in our baseball program. If so, I can arrange that for you. And if that's not helpful, you won't hurt my feelings if you just say, no, we don't need that.
Like Mr. Grant said, I think that'd be a good discussion. Be good to do that.
I think from my perspective, I'd say I'd weigh pretty heavy on our ADs and knowing their needs and how they assess it too. And, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gabe.
What Superintendent Klein proposed, I think that was like a great idea. Just some conversation related to overall priorities and how it relates to budget and all that.
Okay. And I think we can come up with that work session pretty reasonably. I don't think it's going to be an extended time before we would do that. But hopefully we can do that and get back with you soon.
Very good, thank you.
Thank
If you have any-
you.
Obviously, if you have any questions, reach out to us at any time.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. We do have August 11th, our first day of students back in the classroom. I see a cringe out in the audience here. November 10th through the 12th is the KSB conference in Wichita. We'll start, Ms. Zimmerman, with you.
Thank you. I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting, and they are happy to have baseball and softball fields with turf so that the games can continue after rainstorms. I attended the all-staff assembly yesterday. I also attended, not so much as a board member, but as a mediator. I attended a training on listening skills with a listening expert, Dr. Laura Janusik, who has her doctoral degree in listening skills, and that's part of our communications goal is not only reading and writing and speaking, but also listening. And it was really interesting about how listening is a learned skill, and you can learn it better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bendrick.
First, just for anybody that might be listening, I regret not being able to come to the opening meeting yesterday. The calendar just became complicated at the last minute, and I apologize that I wasn't able to be there. It's an important event. In the last month, I did attend the Smoky Hill Lead Service Center. I guess that would have been the July meeting. Things of note there is they, just like USD 305, don't exactly have a plethora of applicants for any position, and they've been able to fill things, but even they are working with people who don't necessarily have teacher licenses. They're going through the non-traditional certification route. Think of one position at St. Francis in particular that has been nicely filled, but there's extra work to be done to get the people kind of up to speed. And so you'll know the strong-armed me into being president of that group again. So should you need anything Smoky Hill, we'll track it down that way.
Thank you, Dr. Bendry. Ms. Schamberger.
Yeah, I attended the Parks and Rec Board.
On the FDS board, Michael Chambers did resign, take another position, so we're going through the process of hiring someone new for that role. But no other changes.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Gardner. No report. Ms. Cusso.
I attended the kickoff celebration yesterday and was very impressed by our speaker who's sitting out here. I was very moved by that. Thank you.
Amen.
Yes. I was also there yesterday, and Sarah did a great job. It was great hearing your story. I think that's the first time I'd heard that, so thank you, and you did a great job. I've also attended the new teacher welcome, and then several meetings with the Ed Foundation as we're working through Mr. Chambers' departure. But I think we've got, some things that will, that will always, it will be a great move for him as he goes on, but we'll look for great things for the Ed Foundation moving forward as well. So we'll go to the superintendent's report with Ms. Exline.
Okay, just a couple things. The first is that we are going to have a handling upset conscious discipline training that is available to the community at large. And there will be 8-week e-learning courses from conscious discipline. And so, like you said, that information is great as a parent, as an educator, as a spouse, just communicating with other people that sometimes are maybe in high emotional situations. And so that information is available on our website, and we'll be getting out info about that as well as time goes on. And I also want you to know that on August 29th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m., we do have a panel discussion planned about substance abuse prevention. And again, open to the public. That is going to be a joint session that we're doing with, you're going to have to help me, Mrs. Rector, Central Kansas Foundation.
Yeah, and then also the Tammy Walker will be working with us, and then our Salina PD, we'll have some school staff there as well.
Okay, so Salina PD, some school staff, Tammy Walker, and so some great options there. Then I wanted you to know that we did have threat assessment training for all of our administrators. And that happened actually, we included building teams. So there is a building leadership team in every building that will be assessing situations and determining what kinds of interventions we need to do for students when students are needing some extra support, working with parents to make sure that we're making the very best environment for students that we can. And then the last thing that I wanted to tell you about is we do have the visible learning training. The Foundations Day is tomorrow. And I want to invite you to attend. If you want to attend, I'd like for you to visit with me before you leave here tonight, because we've got 4 sites, and I'll split you between sites if you'd like to drop in. We have that training at the middle schools are going to be together, the 2 high schools are going to be together, and then 2 sites for elementary teachers. But board members, if you'd like to pop in and just see, visit with me before you go tonight, and I'll assign you to a site so that we don't all end up at the same place. Okay?
All right, thank you. The next item we have on our agenda, Mr. Grant.
Lynn, could you provide any information on, I know, I'm sure our staff is interested in the hospital. Process.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually did send a letter to our employees to just let them know that we are actively working on this. I did meet with Joel Phelps from Salina Regional Hospital last week, and to better understand what exactly is happening with those negotiations. I have a meeting on Thursday with some other community leaders that are also Blue Cross Blue Shield for their employees' insurance, and so we are visiting a little bit about that. In addition, I have directed our benefits group that we need to get our benefits committee together to talk about what exactly this means for us, options. What we are going to make every effort that we can to make sure that our staff is taken care of. So our staff doesn't need to worry about that. Our insurance will stay in effect, and we are on top of that. I will have more to report probably next month. But we are going to look at insurance options in case that becomes a need, for us to look at an option other than Blue Cross. But right now, our insurance is in effect and will be in effect through this calendar year and on to the next October. And we should know soon some more information about how those negotiations are going. We are going, we need to urge that that both sides return to the table and try to work something out. So Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Superintendent Exline? All right. The next item on our agenda is executive session for personnel. We do have a motion. How long do we need for that? I'm seeing 5, so 10 minutes?
No, really, 5 will be okay.
Okay. 5 minutes if.
Now I'll be wrong.
Is someone prepared for the motion? Dr. Bandry?
I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:25 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters and non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed. That the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:30 in the SEC room.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Zimmerman seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Mr. Grant? Motion carries 7-0. We will be moving to executive session. Is there a motion? Mr. Bandry?
Mr. President, I move
Dr.
that,
Bandry, I'm sorry.
I move that the board accept the resignation of Kendra Maples as of August 3rd, 2023, and that the board, and that she be assessed, pardon me, the $3,000 in liquidated damages pursuant to the negotiated agreement.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Zimmerman seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. We will now go into our work session and stop our live stream.